Breaking news coming into Fox News Channel. The president has now been briefed on a downed F-15 fighter jet in Iran. This is a U.S. fighter jet. We are also told a statement from CENTCOM is expected shortly. We want to bring in the chief national security correspondent, Jennifer Griffin, with more on this. Jen, what are you hearing?
Well, Trace, we had some details of this alleged downed F-15E fighter jet that went down in southwest Iran. It's in the province that is actually closest to Karg Island, which we've been hearing so much about. We had withheld reporting on this until now because there was an active search and rescue operation ongoing. But now that we've learned that the president has been briefed on the downed F-15, we are getting some details from open source online showing that the actual pilot seat from the F-15 was seen on the ground, suggesting that at least one of the pilots had ejected, and the pilot was not present at that site where the photo was taken. So that suggests that one may have survived at least. There are two pilots in an F-15E, and they would have been flying. We see also some open source video showing that there were two search and rescue helicopters that were being refueled midair in daylight. That would suggest, again, an urgency to that search and rescue mission, because it would be rare to conduct a search and rescue mission with low-flying helicopters over an area that is possibly contested. Given that this happened during the daylight hours, it shows an urgency and a suggestion that the pilots may have survived. Trace?
I know you've worked in that area a very long time, Jennifer. I'm wondering, a lot of some of this information coming through about this search, about, letting the people of Iran know that some pilots might be out there. What do we know about Iranian television? How credible is it, and how much concern is that people are being told to do certain things inside the country?
Well, Iranian media, as you know, Trace, is state-controlled. It is a propaganda network that would have an interest, and we have seen over the last 32 days or so that they have put out multiple times that they had shot down F-35 fighter jets, and it had not been true. That is why it was so important for us to get independent confirmation that this F-15 had, in fact, gone down. So some of the details that the Iranians are putting out may, in fact, be propaganda for their purposes. But what we can say at this point is the President of the United States has been briefed on this F-15 going down, and that CENTCOM is expected to put out a statement. So we feel comfortable in reporting the fact that the F-15 did go down. But in terms of the reliability of Iranian state television, it is part of the war effort at this point. Trace?
Yeah, let's bring in Benjamin Hall to the conversation here, because we still don't know how the F-15 went down. We don't know if this was mechanical. We don't know if this was shot down. A lot of things very much unconfirmed right now, Benjamin.
Yeah, that's right. And, in moments like this nowadays, we are actually watching online, and we're looking at some of the videos that are coming out. And you have to be really careful, of course, about Iranian state TV. But there have been images coming up of the ejector seat on the ground, so it's clear that appears to have been fired and discharged, and no pilot near it. But look, from the beginning of the conflict, we have to remember that the U.S. moved quite carefully over Iran with its airplanes, and it began with sort of the B-2s and some of the higher flying planes as they knocked out and tried to get air supremacy. And there was a feeling that air supremacy had been gained at that point. And so it'll be really interesting to see how this plane was shot down. Now, Iranian state TV, and again, their state TV, we must never take anything 100% from them, but they also put out a request that if anyone found these pilots, they would offer a reward of $60,000. That's 10 million local currency. Which is something that we haven't seen them say before, even though they have claimed that they've shot down planes before. And so there is a feeling that perhaps they are actively looking for pilots as well. And of course, this is a fear that so many people would have. If those pilots were taken, it changes this conflict in many, many ways. Now, we do not know at this point what has happened to the pilots, and we're watching very closely. But certainly, we know that the U.S. has been out there doing search and rescue as well. We've seen the helicopters in that part of southern Iran. And so, look, we know that there's a search and rescue operation underway. We know that the plane did come down. We know that the President Trump has been briefed, and we're waiting to find out more at the moment, Trace.
Benjamin, stand by if you would. Let's bring in Lieutenant Colonel Darin Gaub, retired Black Hawk helicopter pilot, is also a battalion commander. Colonel, you look at the plane and what Benjamin is talking about there, and there's some pictures of the ejection seat on the ground. There's no pilot near it. It's kind of a good news, bad news scenario, meaning that the pilot appears to have survived the ejection because the pilot is not there. Maybe that's speculation. The bad news is that, you have Iranian media warning the people to look for these pilot whatever they find, and offering a $60,000 reward, which is also concerning about what might happen when and if they landed on the ground.
Yeah, Trace. The first thing I guess I'll emphasize here is the fact that when something like this happens, whether it's mechanical failure or an actual shoot down, because of where it's at, this becomes the mission. This is the focus, regardless of whether we know the status or not. They will try to confirm the status of what is happening with the pilots the entire time. But this will be the focus until they have some sort of resolution on all of this. I've been involved in combat search and rescue and personnel recovery operations, planning and execution side, and I can tell you that the entire CENTCOM area, as well as national assets, go into an operation like this with a very much layered plan from space down to ground on how to recover pilots from behind enemy lines. And that will be in effect immediately as soon as they get the report. So people watching this can know that the military takes it extremely seriously when it comes to recovering pilots who've been shot down or lost behind enemy lines, regardless of how it happens.
Yeah, so you're saying it happens immediately, and I'm wondering, because Jennifer Griffin was talking about, the risk of having low-flying helicopters that might be searching. What else can be done to try and evaluate exactly what happened to the pilots in this case, Colonel?
Well, the pilots will be carrying systems on them that they have the capability to use if they are functioning, to send broadcast signals out to let them know the status. And I can't get into that too much in depth. Now,
Sure.
As far as the launching of aircraft to recover pilots, that will be done after a threat assessment is made to make sure that you're not creating a larger problem by sending in low-flying helicopters in this case. So the notification and the process starts immediately. Launching of recovery assets to pull any pilots out can take a little bit of time depending on what they find out about the situation. But there are multiple different systems that can look at the area and gain both signals and visual intelligence to ensure they do the best they possibly can to know what exactly the pilots are doing. And as you can imagine, there's a lot of this that is in the classified arena about how it functions.
Yep. Yeah, I can only imagine. Colonel, stand by. Let's get back to the Chief National Security Correspondent, Jennifer Griffin. Jen, what else?
Well, Trace, I think it's important to remember at the top of the hour we were reporting on an latest intelligence that suggests that nearly half of Iran's ballistic missile stockpile have, in fact, survived despite the 11,000-plus strikes that the U.S. military and U.S. Air Force and Israelis have carried out. It really is quite a miracle that more planes have not encountered even mechanical failure over Iran, given the number of flights and the number of strikes that have taken place. You'll remember there were 3 F-15Es that were shot down through friendly fire at the start of the conflict by an overzealous Kuwaiti pilot who mistook them for incoming. But those pilots survived. They managed to eject safely. And in fact, we were told that at least one of those pilots was back in the fight flying missions over Iran. So, so that we do remember. But in terms of ballistic missiles surviving, a lot of the ballistic missile launchers have been destroyed. But we also just learned minutes ago that 3 waves of ballistic missiles were fired towards northern Israel by Iran. So it suggests that these mobile missile launchers are very hard to find. They are hidden often in underground tunnels that have been built over the last 20 years. And so there is still a danger to pilots flying over Iran in terms of anti-aircraft attacks and also potential mechanical failure. We don't know what brought down this F-15E. And then also the fact that Iran is still able to threaten the Gulf countries with ballistic missiles and drones, as well as the Strait of Hormuz, as well as Iran, shows that that even if they still have a few ballistic missiles and drones, they are still going to be threatening their neighbors, and that this mission is far from complete, but also extremely dangerous to continue sending pilots into this contested area.
Yeah, just for clarity here, Jen, you say that you don't know the cause of this plane going down. CENTCOM is about to release a statement, we were told, any moment now. Would CENTCOM know how the plane went down? Is that something they would put out in this, or is this just a general statement in your assessment?
My belief is that we will have very few details in that CENTCOM statement. They will want to confirm that the F-15 perhaps went down, but it will be under investigation. And that is important because they also don't often first reports from the field are not clear, and so they don't want to put out misinformation, but they also don't want to give battle damage assessment to the Iranians. So that's why this is so sensitive right now. It is why we were cautious in reporting this until the president had been briefed, because, again, we don't want to do anything that would jeopardize the lives of those pilots if, in fact, they did survive and, in fact, if they have not both been rescued.
Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube, and catch full shows streaming now on Fox One.